Thank you so much. So, good afternoon, everyone, once again, and welcome to today's important session. My name is Kweku Entry. I work with the Forum for Agricultural Research in Africa, FARA, and I lead a cluster known as Research Policy and Investments here in FARA. And it's my pleasure to welcome all of you to today's webinar, which is very important webinar because of the topic that is planned to be discussed, the topic around mining and agriculture. And in this session, today's session, we're going to discuss some insights from Ghana. And so it's also a webinar that comes in, or that is coming in at the right time, looking at the mining situation here in Ghana at the moment. As a way of introduction, as a way of welcoming you, allow me to say that Ghana's economy has, for a very long time depended so much on agriculture, which has been described as the backbone of the economy. However, in recent times, mining has gained a lot of attention because of the exports. The exports received that Ghana gets from mining, and so mining has been part of the economic activities of the country, and the economy of the country has long been shaped by rich mineral resources, and also strong agricultural basis. Here we talk of mining, we talk mostly about gold and other minerals. Now, in many parts of the country, what we've realized is that mining, especially the mining affected areas, there has been a shift in land use, and there has been a shift in labor dynamics, and the local economies, because now there's a lot of dependencies on mining. And these changes, raise critical questions, as you may know. And for example, how can mining and agriculture coexist sustainably? And how do we do mining without destroying, agricultural lands? What are the impacts on farmers' livelihoods, and food systems, which is very important? And what lessons can we draw, to inform policy and practice as we do mining and as we do agriculture in a sustainable way? So today's webinar offers us this opportunity to explore these issues, as I've already highlighted. And to do that, we'll hear from experts and practitioners who will share their experiences, share some evidence in terms of data, and also offer practical insights from Ghana specifically, and this we are doing to help foster informed dialogue and also support, a more balanced, inclusive, and sustainable development outcomes. With these remarks, I would want to encourage you to actively engage in the discussions, share your own experiences, and make the most out of this, learning opportunity. And to help us dive deep into these discussions, we have two distinguished presenters. I'll introduce them briefly, and then we will kickstart. So the first presenter is Dr. Isaac Nunu, who would help us understand the trade-offs between agricultural land and small-scale gold mining in food security, in mining-affected districts in Ghana. So Dr. Danso would help. Sorry, Dr. Nunu will help us.
Yes. Thank you. Just a minute. Dr. Isaac is not online now, so just want to draw your attention.
Okay, all right, that is well noted. So I will still read his profile, and so that when he joins us, he will just get in. So Dr. Nunu works with the FAO Ghana, the Investment Center, and he is the coordinator for Sustainable Cocoa Initiative at the FAO in Ghana. Dr. Nunu has over 15 years experience in agricultural development, which focuses more on food system transformation, policy, gender equality, and sustainable value chains. His work bridges research and policy as well as implementation, supporting governments and development partners to design and deliver evidence-based interventions. He has supported agricultural programs across several countries in Africa, and these include Ghana, Nigeria, Cameroon, and Cote d'Ivoire. His work prioritizes smallholder farmers, women, and other vulnerable groups within the food systems. Dr. Nunu holds a PhD in agricultural economics and has worked across academia, government, and international development organizations. So when he joins us, we welcome him accordingly. Now, our second presenter would help us also understand whether informal small-scale gold mining affects household agricultural outcomes. And he'll do this by, providing us a special analysis of the Ghana cocoa sector. And our second presenter, we are also privileged to have Dr. Katerina Grumbigel, who works with the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. And Dr. Katerina currently works as a scientific project officer on macroeconomics in Africa at the GRC, as I've already indicated. And she's based in Seville, in Spain. She has been working for about 14 years in the field of sustainable rural development. And her work links research and impact evaluations to policy making and project implementation. She has held different positions in academia, national development agencies such as GIZ, and international organizations such as IFAD. Her work has predominantly focused on vulnerable groups in agri-food systems, such as agricultural workers and small-scale farmers in Africa. She also has worked in providing research support to the EU-funded Sustainable Cocoa Initiative, which is an initiative to enhance the economic, social, and environmental sustainability of cocoa production in Cote d'Ivoire, Ghana, and Cameroon. She also holds a doctoral degree in agricultural economics from the University of Göttingen in Germany. Dr. Katharina, would you want to say hi to the participants? Just a hello.
Well, hello, everyone.
Yeah, good to have you.
Okay.
Good. And also to make sure that your microphones
Indeed.
and everything work together. Yeah,
Yes.
right. Thank you so much for joining and for making time to join. Francis, do we have Dr. Nunu now? If not, then we would now swap and have Katharina making the first presentation, and then we will now invite Nunu when he comes in. Francis?
Dr. Nunu is still not here yet.
He's still not in yet? Okay, all right, right. Then in that case, to save time and in order not to wasting it more time, we would invite Dr. Katharina to come in and provide us with her presentation. So as she makes her presentation, we have the chance to ask questions in the chat and to also put in our comments in the chats. You can also raise your hands when it's time for questioning, and we'll give you the opportunity to do so. Right, so I would like to, on these notes, request Dr. Katerina to come in and make her presentation. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you so much for the very kind introduction and giving me the floor. I've actually texted Isaac. He's a colleague of mine, so hopefully he'll join us during my presentation. Let me quickly try to share my presentation, which worked before, and now I have my doubts, but I'll try my best. Yes, let's see. It could be that, no, okay, no, I think
Yeah.
this is not the way to do it.
I think we
If I
saw
open my
it.
PowerPoint, yeah, do you see it?
Yeah, we saw it, but not in presentation mode. So
Okay, let me do this. How about now?
no, now we're not seeing it.
Great. Starting well.
Right.
Let me retry.
Okay, it has started sharing. Okay,
Yes.
now we see it.
Okay, and now I do it and put it in
And now in
presentation mode.
presentation mode. Very good.
Is it fine?
Perfect.
Okay.
Very
It means
fine.
I don't see you anymore. I'll be talking into a black box. I will try to keep track of my time, but
Yeah.
since I will not be able to see anyone, if there's anything that doesn't work or is failing, just let me know and come in and interrupt me, please. Yeah,
Sure,
is that
sure.
okay?
Sure, I'll do
Okay.
that.
Okay, great. Okay, well, then I'm glad I prepared a few slides on the background because I wasn't entirely sure how much my presentation might overlap with that of Isaac Nunu. But since now we swapped, it's all good. I am prepared. So I'm really happy to speak to you today about work that I've been implementing together with two research from the University of Göttingen, Marlene Wetzold and Maike Wolny, on what has already been mentioned, the relationship between small-scale gold mining and cocoa production in the specific case of Ghana. Now, this is unpublished work. We're in the final stages of sort of finalizing the manuscript. So just bear that in mind. There might be still a few tweaks to what you then potentially see shared at a later stage. So this has also been mentioned. This is work that is taking place in the context of the Sustainable Cocoa Program. Both actually, Isaac and myself, we are part of that program. We support it. It is an EU-funded program and is co-implemented by the FAO, the German Development Agency, the European Forest Institute, and ourselves, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission. We implement this program in 3 countries. No, it has already been said. And the overall objective is to support environmentally sustainable cocoa production that also provides a living income and economic future for cocoa farmers. We've been there for a while. It's actually been ongoing since 2021. So let me set the scene a little bit. And I apologize just very quickly. Small cold on my end. So to set the scene, cocoa production in Ghana is a very important sector. Many of you might know this. No, it's actually Ghana's the second largest cocoa producer in the world, accounting together with Cote d'Ivoire for about 60% of the global cocoa production. It is an extremely important source of foreign currency and government revenue. And it involves also a great deal of households. 850,000 is the approximation of those people involved. At the same time, and here comes the more information about the gold sector. So actually gold is nothing new in Ghana. There's a reason it is called the Gold Coast. It's very well known that Ghana and surrounding areas, so this is what you see on the map on the left-hand side, that gold deposits are to be found in Ghana. Ghana is among the top 10 gold producers. What we've seen in recent years, however, is really this shift in importance of gold. And this has a lot to do with the increase of the gold price. So in the last 25 years, we have really seen a substantial rise in the gold price, basically from 280 US dollars per ounce in 2000 only to 4,600 US dollars per ounce actually this year. So this is adjusted for inflation. And that has a lot to do with gold being, of course, a safe haven asset. Every time there's turmoil, uncertainty, geopolitical tensions, war, the demand of gold rises, and that also is reflected in the gold price then, of course. And so that, of course, has sparked a lot of interest in, producing, exporting, mining more gold. And this is what we can also see in Ghana, where we always have to differentiate a little bit between large-scale gold mining and small-scale gold mining. So, of course, large-scale gold mining, it is a very productive type of industry. It usually is much more geographically contained. It is usually licensed. So, a mining operator setting up a large-scale mine, of course, will go through a licensing process to be able to really mine that area specifically. This doesn't necessarily happen in the artisanal small-scale mining sector, in that sense that it is very often informal and often also even illegal, meaning that it's basically unlicensed. Informality and illegality, they're not always so black and white. There's a bit of a range. So informality is usually what is called when there is some sort of agreement with local authorities, even though it might not be necessarily under an official license. That is more informal. At least there is some consensus locally that this artisanal mining is sort of okay with the community, while illegal often means that it is mining in, for example, natural reserves or protected areas, and there's absolutely no agreement by local communities. There's approximately 1 million people also employed in the gold sector in Ghana, and what I just want to make clear is this relationship between gold mining and cocoa production. So ultimately, the reason why there is this political this tension that has arisen in the last couple of years is predominantly because it overlaps in terms of the territory. So it's basically a question of land competition, and that has increased in recent years. Cocoa production and gold mining, particularly around rivers, takes place in the same space, and both are land intensive. So in comparison to large scale mining, small scale mining is an expansive approach. No, so basically this is why it happens along the rivers predominantly. It's open pit mining. It's very accessible on the rivers because basically water washes out the gold of the soil. So it's very accessible. People go in with machineries that are not very high technologically developed, and you can basically open a pit mine, get the gold. As soon as it becomes more intensive in terms of technical requirements, they basically move on to the next site rather than investing into a specific spot. This is why it's expansive. It really covers a lot of land, let's say. What hasn't really helped, let's say, in terms of sort of this competition for land is the low cocoa prices that we've seen for a very long time in the sector. They have risen over the last couple of years. Now they have fallen again, but these low cocoa prices, of course, have contributed to landowners potentially selling off land. They have also received compensation, even if it's just a one-off payment. It has made it, at least to some people, attractive to basically sell their cocoa land. But there's also quite some reports of coercion to sell land through encroaching of mining activities, which is also something that people know that if mining appears in a certain area, it can affect your own land as well. In the end, we don't really know how much cocoa land has been lost. So we don't really fully know the scale of the problem itself, but it certainly has, and this is also what Kwaku has mentioned in the beginning, it has caused a lot of political attention. So of course, the main regulator of the cocoa sector in Ghana, Cocoa Board, has announced this problem and sort of is trying to address it. Cocoa producers have raised it, of course, as well, because they can fully lose their livelihoods, or of course, their livelihoods can be diminished. So even though we are not fully aware of the scale of the problem, we know that there is one, especially in certain specific areas. So we, of course, looked a bit into the literature, trying to understand, sort of these potential impact pathways between informal small-scale mining and our agricultural outcomes, specifically economic agricultural outcomes. And we tried to cluster a bit the literature and sort of made an informed overview of potential impact pathways. And we see that indeed small-scale mining can have some positive benefits also for the agricultural or rural space in terms of infrastructure development, in terms of service provision. So we're talking road access, for example, or business opportunities. Miners have to eat, miners have to have housing. So those things, of course, can develop, which can then, of course, also provide off-farm employment opportunities, either through businesses or also through mining sites themselves. But at the end, it has been sort of concluded in the literature that while these benefits can be seen, they're often relatively short term. And that has to do with this sort of expansionist approach that I've mentioned, that they're not really there for a long term investment. They're not really there for a long time. They move on relatively quickly. And unless you move with them in terms of with your business or, with your as an employment source, then you lose this sort of income after a relatively short period of time. In that sense, the overwhelming, let's say, conclusion of the literature that we have reviewed, however, especially when it comes to agricultural outcomes, is a negative sort of conclusion. So basically, while there are positive elements, particularly the chemical use, which is mercury, to wash out the gold from the soil, that is really a detrimental effects on health, both human health when it comes to the miners themselves, but also when you look at the people that live along the waterways, that use the waterways. So it really, there have been studies that have shown these physical short-term and also long-term sort of health impacts. The land use change which is quite substantial in terms of, land excavation. These open pits basically means you destroy that land and everything that's on it for a relatively long period of time. So deforestation, including the destruction of cocoa farms, but also ecosystem services are affected, and the health of the soil itself, which all has repercussions, of course, to the yield and revenue and profit related to whatever has been on those plots before. And this is a little bit where the study is heading, surrounding areas. Okay, so we in the end use two specific data sources. Apologies, I need to so we combine two specific data sources that we combine through GPS locations of households. So what you can see on the left-hand side, we use data provided by the Servier West Africa Consortium, which is a NASA and a USAID initiative that established a monitoring of artisanal mining service. As far as I'm aware, that's possibly one of a kind. Together with the Center for Remote Sensing and Geographic Information Services in Ghana, they set up, they basically use satellite imagery to identify particularly artisanal gold mining between 2015 and I think the last year is 2024. It is particularly the informal, as I said, informal and illegal. That's, of course, very difficult to spot from space. So overall, we call it informal because we cannot always be certain it is illegal. However, they have excluded licensed operations, so licensed small-scale operations. So we can be pretty sure that this is informal, artisanal, unlicensed small-scale mining. And what we combine it with is a survey that we generated, or rather the University of Göttingen collected in 2022-23 with the same reference period. So we're talking about the year 2022 with 835 households, employing a two-stage stratified sampling strategy. So basically first randomly selecting villages based on census data and on production data from 2019. And then within those sampled villages, lists of cocoa farmers were developed to then randomly sample from those lists of farmers. So these were combined, which already tells you we actually do not, this was not a purposely sampled survey to determine this direct relationship. We actually don't know, for example, if our households have specifically lost land or converted land to mining. So that is just something that should be kept in mind in this regard. So we're interested in, ultimately our key variables, our outcome variables are cocoa yield, cocoa revenue, and profit. So as I said, we take the last 12 months because we're interested in understanding the economic outcomes of cocoa production, of gold mining on cocoa production. And we derive two main explanatory variables from the mining data. So we calculate, first of all, the distance to the closest mining site. So basically, based on the GPS location of the household, the distance to the centroid of the closest mine, which we can identify through the shapefile layer of the secondary data that I mentioned. Then we're also interested in accounting for a little bit the intensity of mining as best as we can. And so we basically create a radius around our households, of every household, and we count the number of mining sites within a radius of 3 kilometers, assuming an inverse distance relationship. So basically, the closer the mine, the stronger the effect. What type of analysis do we employ? So we employ a spatial autoregressive model because we assume correlated effects as a result of a common exposure to gold mining, which so the spatial autoregressive model basically accounts for that through the incorporation of a row normalized spatial weight matrix, again based on the inverse of the Euclidean distance between each pair of the producers. Our main variable of interest are the two ones that I've just mentioned. These are the mining variables. We run separate regression for both of them. We don't include them at the same time. And we account for a number of control variables, of course, at the various levels that are very often recommended in the literature. So farm level variables related to the quality of the soil, the pest burden, the input use. At the household level, the level of education, the number of working age adults. We also actually know whether or not the household has derived any revenue from gold mining, so we're able to include that. And then we also include community level information based related to services such as distance to a tarred road, electricity, and we include a degree of urbanization, a variable which basically we want to include to account for, sort of the ability of deriving other types of income outside of agriculture. We perform a statistical test to see, whether or not we see spatial autocorrelation in our data, and it actually does confirm that spatial autocorrelation is present when looking at the outcome variables of cocoa yield, cocoa revenue, and cocoa profit. So let's have a look at the descriptive results, and I first would like to focus on the extent and the prevalence of mining, because as I said before, we didn't purposefully sample our survey in the way that relates the households to mining, apart from the fact that we asked them if they're involved in any way. But to have some understanding of the prevalence of mining, I would like to start with that. So basically, when you look onto the right-hand side, these are just kilometer bands determining the share of households that have their closest mining site within 0 to 1 kilometer, 1 to 2 kilometer, 2 to 3 kilometer. And what that tells us is that actually 70% of our sample has their closest gold mine located within a 3 kilometer distance. On the little box above, or just below the title, let's say, you see that the average distance to the closest mining site, if we take the full sample, is 2.61 kilometers to the closest gold mine. And even though I don't show it here, I can tell you that the maximum distance between a household and the closest gold mine is around 12 kilometers. So this is just to show you, even though this was not a purposeful sampling, gold mining, artisanal small-scale gold mining is prevalent. No, so it's really not the question of whether a gold mine exists. It really is a question like how close it is. They are very prevalent within across the regions that we basically sample, which are the 5 most productive gold regions in Ghana. To give you a bit more sense of the data, and probably just, I don't really want to go through every sort of result. You might be interested to see, how much our cocoa producers in the sample are actually involved in small-scale mining, and the answer is not very many. So of course, this is a descriptive result. But when thinking about, that people do refer to, well, if producers don't do gold mining, they might indeed be doing small-scale gold mining. This, at least from what we see, small-scale gold mining doesn't seem to be an additional source of income for the sample that we drew in this case. So cocoa producers certainly also have other types of income sources, but small-scale gold mining doesn't seem to be a major one. It's really just 0.005% of our sample is involved in small-scale mining. Another thing I would like to highlight, and just to describe to you, so you see the full sample, so it's basically the average across the entire sample, but then we also we basically compare households with a mine site within a 3-kilometer radius with households that have no mine site within a 3-kilometer radius. This is not really something that we then include in the regression analysis. It's just for some comparative analysis, let's say for the descriptive results. But I don't really want to go too much into detail here, but the only thing I wanted to mention as well is that when we look at the community characteristics, the households that sort of are closer to mine sites, that have a mine site within a 3-kilometer radius, are more likely to have electricity, are actually more urbanized, and they're also closer to a tar road. Whether or not this is related to mining is really difficult to say. As you know, we have only cross-sectional data. It could be that mine sites develop in areas that are already better connected. It could be that the mine sites are, sort of contribute, as I said, through the impact pathways, that they contribute to, sort of this more development, more electricity, and an increase in urbanization. But we cannot really say that, no? But at least we can control for that in our regression analysis. And this is what I would like to show you now. So the control variables, they're there, but I don't present them because we do want to focus on sort of the mining outcomes. So I'd like to draw your attention to the box in red. Ultimately, what we can see here, and we've log transformed the treatment variable, so our mining variable, but ultimately what you can see is that with a negative association between the proximity of a gold mine on our outcome variables. That means the further away cocoa producers are from a mine site, the higher their yields, the higher their revenue, and the higher their profit. And that is a statistically significant association. Now, because the log transformed variable is maybe not so intuitive, in the red box, you can see what we did in terms of like doubling the average distance to a mining site. So I told you before, the average distance is 2.6 kilometers. If we were to double that, what does it mean for cocoa producers? It means that their yields, the yield increase is associated with 25 kilograms per hectare, which represent a 7% increase in cocoa yields. The revenue increases by 6% and cocoa profit by 11%. No, this is the association. This is also confirmed in the same way when we used our other treatment variable, so the intensity measure. When you double the number of mining sites within a 3-kilometer radius, cocoa yield decreases, cocoa revenue decreases, and cocoa profit decreases, all statistically significant associations, even though by a smaller magnitude in comparison to the distance measure. Now, you may say, and that's fair enough, that the magnitude looks relatively modest, maybe apart from cocoa profit, but looking at the others, it's less than 10%. We do believe this could be a bit of a conservative estimate because, as I mentioned before, with the data, we cannot actually account for land destruction and excavated land. So what we see here is still farmers that farm cocoa. We do not know if they have lost lands, and so we cannot take that into consideration in our estimation. So we consider it to be a bit of a conservative estimate. Now, what we're also interested not only to see what this relationship looks like, but also what potential impact pathways explain this effect between mining and our economic outcomes in the cocoa sector. And while a lot of literature and research has already sort of focused on, let's say, the environmental pathways, we were more interested in looking at potentially if, sort of labor dynamics play a role as well. So we have some data for that we take advantage of, and that's basically the labor input into cocoa production at the plot level. So the days of hectare that the household spends, the hired labor input in days per hectare. If you combine that, that's the total labor input. We have the median agricultural wage in Ghana cedi per day. So these are our labor dynamic indicators. And then we have the agrochemical input expenditure, which we use a bit of as a proxy, as an investment into agriculture here. And we apply the same spatial autoregressive model as well. These are our results. And here we apply the same logic as before. So if you double the average distance of the mining site, basically what that means, there's again a positive association with distance to the mining site. So the further away you are from a mine site as a cocoa producer, the more labor you actually put into your cocoa production. And it's in total, that's indeed 17 days per hectare. This is predominantly driven by hired labor rather than household labor. As you can see, it's 6 days per hectare of household labor, but 10 days of hired labor input. So that's an 18% increase of hired labor when you double the distance, meaning closer to a mine site means that you actually put less labor into your operations. And what could explain that? Well, indeed, we have the information on the median agricultural wage, and we see that it decreases the further so with distance to the mine site, the further away a cocoa producer is, the median agricultural wage decreases. That is slightly statistically significant as well, meaning that what we conclude from that is that competition in high intensity mining areas seems to lead to higher agricultural wages, which means that less hired labor is then actually being used in cocoa production. So let's summarize, and I still have a few minutes, I hope, to then talk a little bit about, of course, also potential policy implications. So as I mentioned, we do see a negative association, and we are a bit careful with the wording based on, sort of the fact that we have cross-sectional data. We cannot fully account for every type of indigeneity we may encounter. So we're a bit prudent in our terminology use. So we do see a negative association between the proximity to small-scale mining when it comes to cocoa productivity and profitability. What we see is that can be partly explained by labor dynamics, and also households located closer to mines have a lower total labor input per hectare, and specifically higher labor input. And this can be basically reflect a pattern of competition for labor near mining sites, basically meaning that higher wages attract workers away from agriculture, so that, you know, in the end, they're less available for, you know, use in cocoa production itself. Now we look at labor dynamics. We don't look at other potential pathways such as land degradation, biodiversity loss, soil health. We do not discard that certainly might also play a role, but we're just not really looking at that in our research here. So what does it mean in terms of policy recommendations? Well, at the well, first of all, I think the sort of underlying fundamental challenge is actually the unregulated operationalizing of the sector as it currently is. So ultimately, in the past, there has been more sort of military approaches to addressing the irregularity and also the illegality. That hasn't really worked because illegal gold has always been bought by traders, which basically means if there's a demand, there will always be people, you know, sort of available to sell it to you. So really making sure that licensing processes are in place that are not too cumbersome, especially for small scale farmers, potentially looking into, you know, large scale farmers and large scale miners and small scale miners, sorry, should not go through the same licensing processes, you know, sort of reducing the bureaucracy burden when it comes to that, potentially looking at the fee structure, because even though it's all in place, people just really don't go through the burdensome process of acquiring a license when you're a small scale miner. There has been developments in this regard. 2025, the Ghana Gold Board was created, very similar to actually the Cocoa Board, Cocoa Board, which is the sole authority now to basically buy and export golds in Ghana. So they have definitely will probably push to regulate and formalize the sector more. And I think one thing that certainly should also be already taken into account, particularly in this licensing process that I've mentioned, is the issue of compensation and negotiations about that as an integrated part of the licensing process. Because that's really very often then an afterthought. What do you do with the land that's basically excavated, possibly with toxic chemicals? Farmers that were farming that land before don't have the funds to basically clean the land and reconvert it to agriculture. So really a more, you know, sort of like government driven approach to, well, if there's now a gold bought, using mining derived revenues and taxes for reinvestment to rehabilitate the soil, to restore lands, I mean, that should certainly be part of that strategy as well. One last reflection, and this is also what we look into when it comes to the labor dynamics. I think it's a bit of a misconception that, you know, labor is not an issue in a rural space in a developing country, that, you know, people are under or unemployed and there's always labor available. But that's not really the case, and we do see differences when we look at the proximity towards mines, that labor dynamics seem to play a role indeed. So looking into potential labor sharing initiatives, you know, especially also in future regulatory processes like the African Regional Standard that is currently being set up, developed, and, you know, eventually implemented, sort of can encourage this, thinking it from the beginning how this can be arranged. And then, of course, also something that hasn't really been done, and I understand it's, as a tree crop, it's potentially challenging to think about mechanizing the sector and using digital tools, things that can alleviate, let's say, the labor requirements, and investing into labor-saving technologies, is certainly something that can potentially address a part of the problem as well. Okay, that is it from my side. I thank you so much for your attention and happy to answer questions and, of course, discuss at some point later in the webinar.
All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Katharina, for this wonderful presentation. I believe that there are a couple of questions and there are a couple of comments and experiences to share. I mean, people have experiences to share here. So we'll give them the opportunity, but in the interest of time, we would invite Dr. Nunu to come in to make his presentation, whilst participants note their questions down. So after the second presentation, then we can have more time to discuss the two presentations. So Dr. Nunu, if you can hear me now, you may want to proceed. Thank you very much, and over to you.
Thanks very much, everyone, and good afternoon to everyone, those who can hear me. And
Yes,
sorry for the
we can hear you.
Sorry for the lateness. As I was setting up, there was an interruption in electricity, so my internet dropped. So that is why. I want to quickly share my screen, and I'll start presenting. Thank you. I'm sharing my screen. Share. Okay. Thanks very much. Please, can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Thanks very much. I want to share.
But if you can put it in presentation mode, that would be better.
Okay.
Yeah.
Please, you're okay now? I want to share on the impact of the trade-off between agriculture and mining, and I want to thank FARA and also EU for this opportunity to share some findings and some research that we did on this in Ghana some few years ago. And Ghana is one country that is so blessed when it comes to natural resources and also agriculture land when it talks about minerals and also agri. Ghana is so blessed to have just resources. And this is the outline of my presentation. I'll have a quick introduction, the methodology, some results and discussion and conclusions, and some recommendation. And we're talking about agriculture and we're talking about mining. These are two big things that the country is made up of. And agriculture, we know, employs over millions of households in Ghana, and 33 to 41% of the population is employed by agriculture sector, of which 80% of them are in the rural households. When it comes to the contribution of agriculture to the economy of Ghana, we're looking at somewhere close to about 30%. And Ghana is dominated by some commercial or commercial crops, and also that of the food security related crops. Looking at cocoa as a main commercial crops and crop that is grown in Ghana, then talk about maize, cassava, yam, groundnut, rice. And through agriculture, there's a lot of employment, food and nutrition is created, and foreign exchange, as well as making use of land when it comes to sustainability. On the other hand, talking about mining also, on the other hand, contributes greatly to the economy of Ghana, 7.6% of the GDP. It also employs over 1 million people. And looking at this, there are small-scale mining That is artisanal small-scale mining, and also large-scale mining. And we want to narrow down to this large-scale, small-scale mining, and it contributes about 40% of the total gold produced in Ghana. So, which should tell us that the artisanal small-scale sector, when it comes to mining, contributes greatly to the economy of Ghana and also this household. You see a picture there that I took by myself, visited some farms when I was taking the data. That used to be a cocoa farm, actually, which has had its fair share of the level of destruction from mining. Mining do not only destroy, but it also contributes to the economy of Ghana. But we'll get to the trade-offs when it comes to between agriculture and that of mining. And what is the problem that we wanted to address? Now, when you see the level of trade-off between agriculture and small-scale mining is on the rise. For the past 12, 15 years, there's been a rise of trade-off between agricultural land and mining land. Most often, it's been a one-way trade-off between agricultural land and mining land. Little is known from between mining lands to agriculture. It's little is done in that direction. So the trade-off has been one-way trade-off between agriculture and mining. And the problem again is that when those farmers trade off their farms or the agricultural land to mining, it leads to food insecurity because one, they wouldn't have money to buy more food, they wouldn't have access to food crops, and they find it very difficult to get. One interesting thing that happened when I visited the field was that one of the towns, they get food from the capital. So food has to be transported from the capital to those cities. A community that used to be a food basket in Ashanti region is now really transporting food from the city center to those communities. And we could see clearly the incident of unavailability of food and very expensive nature of food when it comes to the areas. Now, this is a summary key to the trade-off. I want to talk about two things. One is the food security. We see that agriculture increases or strengthens food security. But on the other hand, when it comes to mining undermines food security because it's the land that is dependent on is destroyed when it comes to small-scale mining. So the net effect is negative. The other one is employment. There is high level of employment when it comes to agriculture, but it is a long-term employment sector. But when it comes to the mining, it is high, like over 1 million, but it's a short-term. So when you look at the difference, it gives you a mixed benefit. Other ones are the GDP, the export, the land use system, and also the water resources. We can do that. Now, what is the objective of this study? Our objective is to assess the impact of land trade-off between agricultural land and artisanal small-scale gold mining and the impact it has on food security in Ghana. So the first specific objective is to look at the trade-off. What has been the level of trade-off between cocoa lands or cocoa farmlands and mining in one of the most dominated mining districts in Ghana? And we want to see the trade-off and also what is the impact of this trade-off on food security. Then I bought like the methodology. So that is a Ghana map on my right that is showing. So the study was done in Ashanti region, looking at, because it's purposive. We purposely went to Ashanti region because Ashanti region is a cocoa dominating this region, and also this same region has a high level of mining incidents. And there are two major districts when it comes to mining in Ashanti region. That is Amansia West and Amansia Central. So these are the two main districts when it comes to mining. So they were purposely selected, and randomly we selected 200 farmers from each of the districts to interview, making up 400. So our sample size was 400. Now, for the first objective, we use the remote sensing and also the GIS information system to analyze. Then the second level, looking at the impact on food security, I use the household food insecurity assess score or the scale, then the coping strategy index, and also the household dietary diversity score. And to look at the level of impact, we used an endogenous social regression model, and this model was used to account for selection biases between those that have traded off and those that haven't traded off. That is why we use the endogenous social regression model. And these are the specification of the model. We had some expected signs and some references to those areas. We looked at gender, we looked at household size, level of education, then some perception variables, availability of land and labor and food and ability to inherit these farms. And this perception variables were collected and ranked, which that is why we use that for. Now, the results. The area that is showing on my left, you see the 2010 map of Amancia West. That shows some patches of red or pink colored areas. Those were areas in 2010 that had mining. Those areas that had mining. So in 2010, there were patches of pink dots, areas showing mining in those areas. And the yellow sections were cocoa. So we could see that Amancia West is one of the high cocoa producing districts in Ashanti region and also in Ghana. So all the yellow patched areas are cocoa dotted areas all over the place. And when you move to the 2020 map, you see that there's been an increase in the level of the pink colors, showing the high level of increase of mining. And this is not commercial mining. This is artisanal small-scale mining. So these are dotted all over. We could see the increase in the pink colors, especially looking at the borders of those of the district and looking at the center of the district map. So now we know pictorially we can see that there's been a change from a shift from farming or cocoa to artisanal small-scale mining. Now I want to know to what extent has this thing, when it comes to figures, numbers, we can see pictorially, we can see, but what are the numbers? So the numbers, looking at the 2010 area under cocoa cultivation, the area that is sectioned red, it was about 77,000 hectares. So as at 2010, there are about 77,000 hectares of farmland, that is cocoa land under cocoa cultivation. Now 77,000 hectares of area under cocoa cultivation. Then when it comes to mining, as at 2010, there was only 2,900 hectares of land under mining. But let's look at the area when it comes to 2020. In 2020, there was a reduction in the areas under cocoa cultivation from 77,000 hectares to 60,000 hectares. And mining from 20,000, from 2,900 to 20,800 hectares. So there's been, you could see a quantum jump in the areas under mining and also a reduction in areas under cocoa cultivation in the Amancia West District between 2010 and 2020. Now, in assessing the farmers, we did analyze their data and found out that out of the 400 people we sampled, over 60% of them fall between the moderate to severe food insecurity level. So now this is for all the sample size. For the 400 people we sampled, we want to narrow down to know those who have traded off their cocoa farm to mining, what has been the impact on them. And when you see the data, the graph below, you see that about 100, almost all those who have traded off their cocoa farm are food insecure. Almost all of them are food insecure. And less than 80% of those who have not traded off, they are food insecure. So you could see that those who have traded off their farm, their cocoa farm for mining have high level of food insecurity in the district. Now, looking at the household food insecurity assess score against those who have traded and those who haven't traded, you could see that about 83% of them really worry. Of those who have traded, 83% of them, compared to 81% who haven't. But even though the numbers are high in all of them, when it comes to the least among them is those who go a whole day or night without eating. You could see that those that have not traded is a bit higher, about 38% of those who have traded, compared to 35% of those who haven't traded. So there you could see that all of them using the household food insecurity assess score, where those who have traded, although have high percentage, those who haven't even traded are also suffering same. Why? Because the districts do a lot of farming, and they don't only farm cocoa. Within the cocoa, there are other food crops that these farmers rely on. So when they lose a hectare of land, they've lost their cassava, they've lost their maize, they've lost their cocoyam. That is the staple that they feed on. They've lost it, not only the cocoa. That is why this figure. Then they're looking at some of the figures. Those that eat limited portion of meal, about 58%, and other 75% of them, you see that all the indicators are high, apart from those that skip a whole meal, and the score, you see that the access score, the coping strategy index score is about 17 for those who have traded, as against 11 for those who have not traded. And the mean difference is significant, because that tells us that those who have traded have the level of food insecurity is high for those who have traded, as against those who have not traded off their cocoa farm for mining. And looking at the household diversity score, likewise, all of them, they relying on other source of vegetable, relying on other source of food. You see that there is varying difference between those who have traded and those who haven't traded. But when you look at the sum, you see that there is a negative there, which means that those who haven't traded, they have high level of diversity more than those who have traded. Probably they could rely on some of the lands or the farms that they still hold on to. That is those who haven't traded, compared to, if you look at the HDDS for the diversity score for those who have not traded, is around 9.6, and that of those who have traded is 7.9, which is low. But it's also significant, though. I would want to make us aware. Now, these are some results from our estimation, and we saw that household size is really, really significant. It's significant, and looking at their level of the land size really play a very significant role when it comes to food insecurity. So now people are giving out their land. When they give out their land, there is a level of food insecurity in there. That is why land size. So the more land you have, the more food secure you are in this situation. But the more land you lose, the more food insecure you become when it comes to the estimation. So we could see varying difference when some of the significant variable and unavailability of land being significant and no one to inherit. That is one of the reasons why some of them are really trading off their cocoa farm. And age it was also significant for the selection. Now, looking at the situation regression for the coping strategy index, we saw that household size was also significant there, and the total land size was also significant there. But the area of interest is the land size. The more you give out land, the less you get access to food, how you could cope. Very difficult for you to cope in that direction. Then now, in summary, looking at the impact, the average treatment effect on the households, average treatment effect for those using the household food insecurity as a score was 7.9, and it was significant. For those who have traded off, it's around 15, which is so high compared to those who have been traded, that is 7.69. And that of the coping strategy is those who have traded have high level of coping strategy, and the diversity index is also high as well. So in all, we could see that the average treatment effects on the impact of the trade-off on farmers who have traded off when it comes to using the food insecurity access score, the household food access score, the coping strategy, and the diversity index as well. We could see a significance between those who have traded and those who have not traded off their land. There is a clear significant difference between them. That shows that those who have traded have high level of food insecurity compared to those who haven't traded. That is what the endogenous situation regression model estimates proves to us. I would want to conclude by saying, looking at the results, looking at the finding and the estimation, we see that about 12,000 hectares of cocoa farm land has been lost between 2010 to 2020 in Amansia West alone. And the food insecurity score for those who have traded and those who have not traded is 15.89. That is on the higher side when it comes to the estimation. We want to say that the challenge is not about mining versus agriculture, but how spatially and we can institutionally integrate so that these two land use options can coexist. And we're looking at zoning and land use, having an efficient zoning and land use planning, and also formalizing and regulating small-scale mining. And number three, having a strict protection of high agriculture landscape, and also promoting reclamation and agroforestry restoration in most of these mined land areas. On this note, thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much, Dr. Nunu. That's a wonderful, a very good presentation that has brought a lot of, insights and has provided evidence. Most of the things that people just talk about, especially here in Ghana, about how mining is affecting agriculture in Ghana. So thank you so much for that insightful presentation. So colleagues on the call, the floor is now open. It is not just to ask questions. Questions are welcome. Areas of clarification that needs to be sought are also welcome. But experiences are also welcome too. I've seen in the chat a lot of people who have done similar work elsewhere, people who have had effect of mining on human health and the rest of it. If you want to share your experiences or what your findings are, you are welcome to do so. So the floor is open. The first presentation looked at the first presentation looked at how informal small-scale gold mining affects household agricultural outcomes using spatial analysis in the cocoa sector. And then that was done by Katarina. Now we've had another one by Dr. Nunu on the impact of the trade-offs between agricultural land and small-scale gold mining on food security, using some districts in Ghana as the case. So, colleagues, the floor is open. I have seen one hand from Fred. Fred, you may want to come in.
Yeah, thank you. I enjoyed the presentations, very, very interesting, because these are very topical issues in Ghana, as we all know. For the first presentation, the results are quite compelling, especially the consistent negative association of both proximity and intensity of of the cocoa outcomes. But my question is about identification. I acknowledge the fact that the presenter, the authors keep talking about the fact that these are associations. But given that mining areas, from what I observe in the field in some places, appear more kind of urbanized and better connected, how do you separate the effect of galamsey from, say, what I'll call underlining sorting? And then the second thing is, since you're using this spatial autoregressive model, how should we interpret the magnitudes that you report, right? Do they reflect what I would say total effects, which would include spatial spillovers, or maybe only partial effects? Because I think the paper would also significantly be strengthened if is it possible to leverage on some exogenous variation in mining exposure? I can think about geological suitability to mining. Could be an exogenous variation that could be explored depending on how this is possible. And also by, explicitly reporting the decomposition into direct and spillover effects. So that would be for the first presentation. I don't know if I should. Okay. What about the second presentation, or should I?
Please proceed. No, you can go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. That's also very interesting. I mean, the application of the endogenous switching regression. My main question, or what I would say concern again, is still about identification. Specifically, I didn't hear anything about exclusion restriction in the selection equation, and I didn't see anything that looked like it. And so identification then becomes a problem. Many of the variables that were used, such as credit access, land size, and so on, are both, they go both ways, right? So I will not see them as credible exclusion restrictions. The second thing is, how should we interpret the regime differences? Would you say these are causal, which is what I hear you say? I would suggest that you can strengthen the identification strategy, possibly by, again, leveraging on some geological or historical mining variation, which could improve your results. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Fred, for sharing those with us and for asking those questions as well. And thanks for the recommendations on how the results can be strengthened. Thank you so much. So, Katharina and then Isaac, kindly note the questions. I'm going to take as many as I can, and then I'll allow you to respond to them. So, I have the next person, Prof. Martin Bosompin from UCC, my alma mater. Please, you may proceed.
Thank you. Both presenters, you've done very good job.
And I want to congratulate you all, especially my student, Isaac. You are making me proud. Yeah. Now,
Wonderful.
I think there's an issue I want to talk about when it comes to the informal small scale and the small scale mining. The ability to be able to delineate and distinguish between in one, especially for the first presenter, Katrina, in one breath we're talking about small scale, in another breath we're talking about informal. So the informal or artisanal, we all agree, we call it galamsey. That is, it's supposed to be illegal, but we are polishing it. We are polishing it to make it informal. But aside from that, we also have the legal one. So in Ghana, as of 2025, we had almost about 2,200 registered small scale. But there is a review, and I think at least about 200 of them, we are told that they are almost operating like the small the informal one. So especially for the special maps, our ability to distinguish between this informal and the formal ones are very limited. Of course, recently there are about 900 of them that we are told they are under hold because their activities are being also investigated. So I think there's a need to be able to delimit the study to see if the issues we are talking about are only for this informal or artisanal, or is there a possibility that perhaps some of the interviewees or even the maps that have been captured are also capturing some of these legal small scale miners, and then so that we don't interchange. So areas that we mention small scale mining, we should always be talking about the informal or artisanal. Other than that, and then we should also be able to, in the literature, see if we can distinguish between the contribution of the registered and legal small-scale mining and that of the illegal or the artisanal or the informal one. So I think these are the few issues I want to talk about. In addition to what I think Fred also talked about, I saw something like that they could do that to make the study robust. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Prof. You have no question for your students? Okay, it's okay. Thank you so much, Prof.
Yeah, I
Is there
said
any
that
other?
both of them should look at the literature to see if they can delineate and distinguish between the formal and informal small scale farming and small scale mining and their contribution.
Yes, all right. Thank you so much, Prof, for that contribution. Before I allow the presenters, is there any other? I'm checking the chat. They are all saying good presentation. Okay, so very good. Let me check again whether there's any other hand. Otherwise, I'll give the floor to the presenters to respond to. So let me allow Katharina in to respond to the questions and then the comments. Over to you, Katharina.
Thank you so much, Kwaku, and thank you so much for Fred, was it? And also Dr. Martin.
Yeah, Fred.
For the very, very good questions. Obviously, identification strategy is challenging, and we've thought a lot about it. So first of all, very simple to answer. These are total effects, not partial, not margin. These are total effects. Sizes. The problem of the identification strategy, so we do include soil type, which gives us some understanding of whether a soil is more likely to have gold in it or not. But the lack of data when it comes to this type of information is a big challenge. So we are looking into, I think the other day I did attend a webinar where there might be somehow like a gold suitability map that we can definitely look into potentially including. We're looking into including the distance of waterways, because obviously water is a big predictor of gold mining, but the challenge is definitely also the overlaps, with cocoa production. What I said before, cocoa production and mining, they usually have the same indicators of suitability. It's similar soils, it's a similar area. So yeah, but in any way, in any case, we'll try to make that a little bit more robust. Sort of differentiating gold mining effects versus other types of effects. This is why we include indicators of, sort of the level of urbanization, community level indicators that tells us something about sort of the overall general development status that we want to account for as well. But yeah, I do take this point, and we'll think a little bit about it some more. On the question of informal and formal, that was posed by Dr. Martin. Yeah, here again, we rely on secondary data, and also this is what was provided by the spatial data set, which I said during my presentation, they delineate informal from formal mining. So we kind of take that, at face value and say, okay, they have discarded formal small-scale mines from the data set. Now, your concern of whether or not even formal mines, sort of behave like informal ones and are just as bad, let's say, or unregulated, sort of the formality doesn't improve the setup of a small-scale mine. That's, of course, something that we cannot judge. We just kind of rely on the fact that, the formal mines are taken out of the data set. We rely on the fact that we can call this informal because that's what they declare to be informal. But I get the point, but maybe this is more a point of the discussion of the nuance, let's say, of what gold mining, small-scale gold mining means in Ghana. Thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot, Katharina. And Dr. Nunu, I have some questions in the Q&A for you. So they are quite lengthy, so you may want to, I think I have 5 of them. So the first one is, how can countries like Ghana effectively balance the economic benefits of mining with the need to protect agricultural land and food systems? So how can that be balanced? The second one is, what practical strategies have proven most effective in resolving land use conflicts between mining companies and the smallholder farmers? Strategies to resolve land use conflicts. Okay. The third one is, what are the most successful approaches to restoring agricultural productivity in areas affected by mining? That's also for you. Then another one is, how can government strengthen policies to ensure mining activities do not undermine long-term agricultural sustainability? So here we're looking at policy implications of your study. There's a quick one here that is asking you, why did you do it on cocoa, not on fish? I think there's somebody who is interested in fish here. So, but there's another intriguing one here. It's saying that, so from your presentation, cocoa farmers who shifted to gold mining earn higher incomes. So if that is the case, why do they remain or become more food insecure than those who stayed in cocoa? The question is, where does the money go? And how can we explain this apparent paradox between higher earning and poor food outcomes? So you get your more income from from mining, and yet you are food insecure. So the question is, where does the higher income go? It's supposed to be so you can probably react to that. Great job to all the presenters. My question goes to Dr. Nunu. I would like to find out whether he considered looking into the link between the extent of trade-off. It's a bit, let me take the question again. So did you consider looking into the link between the extent of trade-offs, that is in terms of proportion of cocoa land allocated to mining, on the outcome variable of interest beyond the conventional dummy variables? So if you got that one too, you can probably respond. So let me allow you to respond to these ones, and then if there are others, I would come back to you on that. We still have some time, so you can proceed.
Okay. Thanks very much, Doc. Thanks very much. So let me take it from the last. The extent of trade-off. We have the extent of trade-off, and because of time, I didn't want to put a lot of data and a lot of slides on it, and we just wanted to give a picture to let us know that the trade-off is really happening. So I will tie into the first question asked by the first during the, I forgot the name, one professor that asked question, not Professor Martin, the other one.
Right.
Now we wanted to know, that brings us to the identification and exclusion and restriction when it comes to the different types of mining. Now, whether it's a small scale mining, so we wanted to draw a distinction between small scale mining and large scale mining. So the small scale mining, there is legal and there's not illegal. Okay, so whether legal or illegal, we wanted to know if it's small scale, want to know the trade-off is having on cocoa, specifically when it comes to the area map and also other land use options. So to the extent of trade-off was done, but because of time and because of the number of slides, we didn't want to show, but there is an extent of trade-off to show that that variable code proved that there is those that have traded off had level of insecurity in that instance. Then the sixth question was those who have shifted, gotten money, and become food insecure. Yes, that is a very beautiful irony. Very beautiful irony. So if you look at the nexus I showed, the summary I showed, okay, so those that trade off, they have a short-term level of bulk money, and these farmers are not one. They don't know how to manage this money very well. They don't invest this money very well, and they try to buy everything. You buy everything and consume, and this money. I had an experience where the farmers were agitating because an organization came to buy a land from them, then gave them money, they negotiated a price. They negotiated a price and paid them. And less than 6 months, they were going back to this company that they've not treated them fairly because the amount they gave them was too small. But they had already negotiated these prices. And so what happens is that they make this money, it is in the short run or in the short term, this money gets exhaustive. So it's not able to take them through. Farmers that have a hectare of land have a piece of place for maize, a piece of place for yam, a piece of something for cassava, for cocoyam. So when they are in need of food, access to food, they can easily go to their farm and harvest and use. So accessibility becomes very simple. Now, when you trade off, you don't have access. The only means you have is the ability to purchase. And the ability is also high. So you were able to buy for some time, but not all the time. Let us not forget that the money they receive is not a regular payment. It's a one-off payment that they receive. So if it happens that way, they become food insecure over time. In a short run, they wouldn't. It might seem like they are not they are food secured, but in the long run, they are. In the medium to long run, they become food insecure. Now, why cocoa? Why cocoa, not fish? Let me break the news that we have actually a proposal ready. We'll be doing fish too. we'll be looking at all the sectors and the impact is going to have on the various sectors, looking at the fishing sector, looking at our water bodies, looking at the soil as well, and all those things. Very soon we'll be rolling out. FA will be conducting that study very soon. So it is cocoa because we saw that a lot of these cocoa farmers, I work with cocoa farmers and I work for them and with them. And I've been hearing complaint of they taking over their land and not receiving the right compensations, and they don't get they don't get food to eat, and they struggle to make money. So that quest led in this particular research to go and find out for cocoa, but for other commodities we want to look at that. And when you talk about ensuring policy for the country, and it is it is a very big there are a few policies in Ghana that are checking the nexus between mining and farm agriculture or cocoa in general, but the challenge is the implementation. So one of the things I think is a practical policy I would want to profess is that mining leases should not be issued to mining companies from the headquarters, that the Ministry of Lands and Natural Resources and the Minerals Commission alone. The custodians of the land, that is the traditional authorities, should be part of this approval process, because we have an instances where a chief is there in his community and all of a sudden he sees a group of people come to them and present as something on the paper. They say that I've been given a prospecting license to come and prospect if there is gold on your land. The next moment they realize there are two excavators on his land in his community, and he's overseer or the caretaker of the land. And so there have been an incident where this happens. Then the community members approach the chief and tells him that, Chief, your kinsmen or your kindred are suffering. There is no job here, and we have foreigners or aliens or external people coming to mine. Why don't you allocate some to us to also mine? At least we pay something to the palace, and the chiefs freely give them access to go and mine. So if it happens like that, it will be very difficult for even the traditional authorities to check as to who is doing what and why and who, because they come with a paper, a prospective license paper to show you the chief, and you have no control, no authority over everything. So I believe that a policy which will involve or include the traditional authorities, the custodians of these lands, will go a long way to help us. And when it comes to successful application in restoring mine areas, mining it's an economic activity, as much as it has a bit of in quotes like superstition on spirituality, because we've had a situation where we've restored an area. We restored a place and about 10 hectares of land, and after 2 years we went back and the whole place was being mined again. Why? Because they said that after 2 years, the gold could come back. So the gold has come back. So all the restored areas have been destroyed. So for a successful application when it comes to restoration, I believe that tying in that to the second question about strategy on how to, we need to have a land plan and allocate lands, red zone areas that are not favorable for mining. We need to do that allocation. If we're able to do those land allocations and ensure that these allocations are adhered to, then there wouldn't be that people will not dare try to infringe or take advantage of, and also the involvement of traditional authorities. And I would want to say that so we can balance when we have a land plan or a a real land planning structure that is allocating land for agriculture, for mining, because one, lands that are rich for good commodities like cocoa, the same land are rich in gold. Gold in the short run is paying more than cocoa. There's no dispute about that. But that is when the trade-off comes in. As a country, do we want the short-term benefit or we want a long-term sustainable benefit? So it's up to us as a country to decide. But where there is a will, there is a way. There needs to be a high level of will from the government institutions and also the agencies that are responsible to ensure that these lands and trade-offs are really managed very well. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Dr. Munu. I think it's becoming more interesting. There are more experiences being shared in the chat. We have one from Zambia, which is also looking at copper, the illegal, safeguarding copper. Maybe if you want to also look into that and then give us some evidence, as you have done for us here in Ghana. So I think it's becoming more interesting, but time is also working against us. But I think I can still take some more, one or two questions, if they are. And then also there are some proposals in the chat as well. Dr. What's the name again? Fred has put in a nice paper, a link to a nice paper that I'm currently looking at, which also offers, more insights into what we are discussing here. So if you get into the chat, you find the link to the paper, and others have also shared some kind of interesting insights as far as the experiences in this area is concerned. So if there are more questions or more experiences to share, I'll be happy to take them. I don't see any hand anymore. There's something in the chat. Let me quickly have a look at it. And then, okay, so it's really becoming more interesting. In the chat, somebody is asking, what is job creation per hectare? I mean, assuming the nation uses 2% of its land for mining annually, what if the 2% fetches $6 billion of revenue under gold board and 2 billion revenue under cocoa board? which of the revenues would you go for? So this is and the question is, should the government impose a ban on forest reserve? These are policy related questions. I'm not sure whether you can give an outright answer to this. Yes, I don't think you can give a straight answer to this. I think next time we will need to get somebody, a government official, to be in such discussions so they can take up some of these policy government related questions. Right. So I think, but we would make sure we make the presentation, the recordings available to all registered participants. so that we can go over and then digest and then learn more lessons from that. But I like one comment from Fred. I think that one, because we still have some time, let me quickly read it. Fred says that it might help to explicitly unpack. So here we're looking at why those who traded off got incomes and were still food insecure. So Fred is suggesting that it might be good to show how income, food prices, and own production change, with a trade-off, or by testing whether controlling for income attenuates the estimated food security effect. So I think when we're able to now unpack these things, it will give us a clear, view on how, we can interpret the values that we have estimated. So I think that's a very good thing we may want to, especially as we're going to do for the aquaculture or the fish. Maybe these are some of the things that we may look at. But the situation, I think it's that is how it is. I have an experience of, farmers wanting to spend their extra income on social events like funerals and outdooring and those things rather than on household food, security issues, getting more and more nutritious food for the household. They prefer spending the extra income on other things, on other social activities than paying attention to household. So increase in income necessarily automatically doesn't translate to, household have being food secure. There are so many factors that, also affect those things. So I do not see any hand. Good. So on that note, let me take the opportunity to thank you so much, Katharina and Dr. Nunu, for spending time with us and for making these presentations. I think you are busy people, so for you to have made these 2 hours to be with us, we really appreciate it, and we say thank you so much for your time. My colleague participants, let me also thank you for your time, for staying here to listen to us. Without you, we wouldn't have had any meaningful webinar. Thank you for the contributions. Thank you for the questions. And as I promised, we will ensure that we make the recordings available to all of you so that you can visit. And I think, as Dr. Nunu said, there's going to be another work on fish, on other sectors. I'm sure if anybody is interested, maybe they can reach out to you to see how they can support in this work, and then they can make themselves available. So thank you everyone for making time. This is one of the monthly webinar series we'll be having. So what it means is that coming in the month of May, we will have another interesting one, and we would be happy if all of you can sign up and also attend those webinar series that we have planned for this year. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day. We'll see you again next month. Bye-bye, and have a good day. Bye for now.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Ciao, ciao.
you. Oh.